in the name of personal injury law.
The recent changes to our auto insurance laws impact everyone in the state of Michigan, but senior citizens are one group of people that have unique circumstances that affect them differently with the new auto laws. Today we have Steve Sinas, a personal injury attorney at the Sinas Dramus Law Firm, here to help us explain how the new auto insurance laws affect senior citizens.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So Steve, tell us about what some unique concerns there are for senior citizens when they have an auto accident.
So I've had a good amount of experience representing seniors who are injured in car crashes, and their bodies just recover differently from injury. Sometimes it can lead to decline. There's just some special considerations that play into how they recover from their injuries. They also have fixed incomes, which affect their ability to take on their cost of treatment if they have to pay out of pocket. And if they're ever facing any type of financial liability from a car crash, if they make a mistake, they certainly don't want to have to pay out of pocket in the event that they've hurt somebody else. So they have some real special considerations, and that's why we're here to talk about that today.
So help us understand how it worked under the original NoFault Law for senior citizens who had an accident.
So I'm going to try to make this simple. Under the original NoFault Law, everybody had to buy no-fault medical expense coverage with lifetime coverage. It didn't have any monetary caps. So if you were a senior and you're injured in a car crash and you're entitled to no-fault benefits, your care and treatment would be covered for life. You didn't need to turn to Medicare or other sources of insurance. And no-fault insurance coverage was there to pay your medical expenses in full, so you wouldn't have to pay for your co-pays and deductibles. So for seniors, it resulted in this comprehensive care. The one thing for seniors, though, is that it would be costly to buy no-fault insurance because they couldn't coordinate. They couldn't buy the cheaper option that was available for a lot of people where they could elevate their health insurance to be primary, because seniors are on Medicare, and the federal government does not allow you to coordinate with other coverages to make Medicare primary. So seniors always had to buy uncoordinated no-fault, which was costly for them, but they still had comprehensive coverage under the system.
And lifetime benefits.
Yes.
Right. Okay, so how did the 2019 reforms change that for senior citizens?
So there's so many things to talk about with the 2019 reforms, but with regard to seniors and their insurance buying decisions, they now don't have to buy lifetime coverage. They can buy capped no-fault medical expense coverage, and they also can opt out from no-fault insurance coverage altogether. The one thing, though, that the reforms didn't solve for these group of people is that with regard to their ability to coordinate, they still can't coordinate to make Medicare pay primary. There could have been creative ways the legislature dealt with that issue and gave them a right to make it so that they got some type of credit or reduction in their premium because they had this other source of coverage through Medicare. But they didn't do that, and so now these people have to either cap their coverage, they can still buy lifetime, or they can opt out altogether. But there's some real concerns about that opt-out.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about the opt-out option and what is the problem for seniors relying on Medicare for their auto accident care and treatment?
Yeah, so when you're buying auto insurance, if you're a senior citizen and you're on Medicare, you're going to be given this option where you can just basically opt out of no-fault medical expense coverage altogether, which means that if you're injured in a car crash while occupying a vehicle, doesn't matter whose vehicle it is, you're not going to have any no-fault medical expense coverage. And with regard to the issue there, Medicare does not provide for comprehensive coverage if you were severely injured in an auto accident. It may pay for your frontline medical care, your surgeries, your hospitalization, but it doesn't cover long-term care, long-term residential treatment, supportive services such as guardianship services, case management services. And I've represented a lot of senior citizens, and they need these types of services and accommodations.
And those things are provided by the NoFault Law.
That's right.
Got it. Okay.
So when you opt out, you're saying, you might be thinking to yourself, well, I'm going to just turn to Medicare and it's going to be okay. But the reality is, if you do that, you might very well have to pay a lot of money out of pocket if you're severely injured. Whereas if you had lifetime medical through NoFault, you wouldn't.
So for the seniors who do opt out of the no-fault medical expense coverage, what are their rights and benefits if they are injured in a crash?
Yeah, as I said before, if you opt out and you're occupying a motor vehicle, you really have no right to turn to the no-fault insurance system to cover your medical care and treatment. So people just need to understand that. There is this aspect of the law that if you are an opt-outer and you're hit as a pedestrian, you can cover your medical expense coverage up to $250,000 through the assigned claims facility, which is this unique entity under the NoFault system. But for all other situations for opt-outers, if you're in a vehicle, you have no NoFault rights. and you're going to have to pursue other sources of recovery for your care and treatment expenses.
Okay. And do seniors with the limited no-fault medical expense coverage have a right to recover the payment of their medical expenses through any other source?
Yes. So if you have limits on your no-fault medical expense coverage, or you are opting out of your no-fault medical expense coverage, you can pursue your medical expenses from the at-fault driver in what is known as an auto negligence claim. And an auto negligence claim is brought against the at-fault driver, but there are some practical limitations in terms of that being a real source of recovery for these senior citizens.
Okay, and tell us more about what those limitations are for with pursuing an at-fault driver.
Yes,
right,
with pursuing an at-fault driver, what you're dealing with in terms of a practical limitation at first is the fact that you have limits on your liability insurance coverage that applies to that at-fault driver. Those limits might be somewhat significant or they might be minimal. And so when you're pursuing the at-fault driver, you have to understand that it's not an endless amount of money that can be recovered there. They have their own limits on their policies. The other issue is that for these senior citizens on Medicare, when they make a recovery against the at-fault driver, the federal government has a right to come in and claim a lien on the cost of the medical expenses that the government paid for that senior's care related to the auto accident. And so the senior who thinks they might be getting some money as compensation for their pain and suffering, all of a sudden realizes that the government can take back its money and there's nothing left.
Because of the medical expenses being so much.
Right. So that's another reason to be real cautious about opting out of your no-fault insurance coverage.
Okay. So, with the time we have left, I think we should, if you could tell us what your ultimate recommendation is for senior citizens who are in the process of buying their no-fault insurance coverage. What are your recommendations to help them make good buying decisions?
So I want to first say that I regret that my recommendations are probably not going to result in a reduction in the cost of people's insurance, but my recommendations are based on what I believe best protects people. And if I was making a recommendation to a family member who is a senior citizen, I would say continue to buy lifetime no-fault medical expense coverage, even though it may be expensive. And also look at your liability insurance coverage in the event you make a mistake, because the other aspect of this whole system is now we can sue each other for our uncovered medical expenses. So if a senior was in a situation where they hurt somebody else, there can be a lawsuit brought against them. And when it comes down to it, the senior might have their own financial liability there. So they want to make sure that they have high liability insurance coverage. And the other way they can protect themselves is through what is known as uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage. And that's in the event the senior is hit by somebody who doesn't have insurance. And if they buy that coverage for themselves, their insurance company steps in the shoes of the at-fault party and pays the claim as if they were the insurance company for that party who might not have insurance. That would be an uninsured claim, or not enough insurance, that would be an underinsured claim. So lifetime medical, increase your liability insurance limits, and buy as much uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage as you can.
So for seniors on a fixed income, how much more money are we talking about?
Hopefully not too much. It depends on where you live. And that's the one thing about these reforms. They're saying that it's going to reduce the cost of our auto insurance, but to have the coverage you need to protect yourself, it may actually cause you to increase the cost of your auto insurance.
All right. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
In the Name of Personal Injury Law is brought to you by the Sinas Law Firm.